There are a lot of tools that were originally intended for animation that modelers have at some point co-opted for their own devious purposes. A lot of those you can find under the Deform menu right here. And there's quite a few of them in there. A lot more than I feel like getting into right now. So I'm going to stick with some of the basic ones that I know I use a lot as a modeler. Specifically, the ones under the nonlinear section right here. So let's go through what a few of these can do, shall we? For starters, the bend tool. Now the bend tool, I press 4, shows up as a little line going through the center of your object. If I look at my channel box on the right, inputs bend 1, ignore this part right here that says curvature, scroll down and find this curvature. And if I change that, make sure I select it first, middle mouse drag, I can curve my object. You see, this is the original shape, this is the new shape that's giving that's the curvature on it. Hard to set that back to 5 so I can see my wireframe now. If I were to rotate this curve with my wireframe on shaded turned on perhaps, you can watch as this isn't just bending or rotating, it is actually changing the direction that is curving along. So it kind of makes it look like my edges are rotating around as it goes. All it's really doing is it's telling it, oh, bend in this direction, bend in that direction. You can kind of see how this could be useful in an animation. It's also useful if I just need to have a C-shaped pipe. Or even all the way around to a circle for whatever shape I want. If I want this for, this particular shape, be fast to use a torus. But sometimes you're not trying to make a torus. Sometimes you want to make a bit more complicated shape that is also an ring shape. But in this case, it's a torus. Below curvature is low bound and high bound. Low bound controls how far this extends from the center to the bottom. So I wanted to have something that's more like a candy cane. I could do that. And of course, it works the same way for high bound. If I bring that down, I can decide, oh, I only want this to bend instead of curve. Okay, bring this back up again to say -5. I can get a U-bend. Lots of things I could do with this. Also, I can move it around, and that controls where it's bending from, and that can have some pretty interesting effects as well. Also be able to scale it to have interesting effects. I'm also going to set that back to 0. Delete this. Deform, nonlinear flare. The nonlinear flare, once again, you got a line, but this time I got 2 circles, one on each end. Scroll down, got a bit more in my inputs this time. Start flare X and Z, end flare X and Z. Curve, low bound and high bound. Or to say, select the start flare. That's the beginning of the flare. At the end flare, I can make that match up or make it smaller. Curve controls how it bends between them. Interesting for you making like vases or bulbs of some sort. Root vegetables. And of course, low bound controls where it starts from and where it ends. Move it up and down. You can watch how that affects it as it goes up and down. Delete that, goes back to normal. The sine, scan just a line through it. Amplitude, of course, you can see what's actually doing to this. There's the amplitude, is how big the sine wave is. Wavelength is how wide the sine waves are. So I shrink them down, you get more sine waves in here. And you need to have a lot more geometry in your model in order for this to work. Offset controls where along this length the sine wave starts. You can actually do a little wiggly thing with that. I've never really found much use for the drop off. It doesn't change the shape of the curve itself, but it does seem to control how well your object stays to the sine wave pattern underneath it. I just leave that alone personally. And just like before, high and low bounds control where the sine wave pattern starts. So I can have it so wiggle through it like that. Squash. Oops, you have to make sure an object is selected, otherwise it doesn't create anything. So nonlinear squash. As you create those squash and stretch effects like you might see in old-timey cartoons, and how he falls off the cliff, hits the ground, goes flat, bounces back up and stretches. This controls how much it stretches as it squashes or stretches. And it controls where it's stretching from. And this controls just what the shape of the stretch is. And once again, low and high bound. Like that. And twist. Well, that one's pretty obvious. That you twist it. I can actually combine these together. So, for instance, if I were to add the twist first, and then make sure I got the object selected, yes, add the bend afterwards, I will see on this object, I got the twist and the bend right here. So if I were to bend it first, and then go to my twist, they still affect each other in that order. Now, it is important that you don't get those backwards. So if I were to add the bend first, see there, right there, and the twist second, if I were to add some twist now, and then go to my bend, which I did first, it's not going to work so well because it's twisting it after I bend it. The order matters. It's twisting this shape, not the original one. The last of the nonlinear deformers I want to show you, under deform, nonlinear, is the wave. The wave isn't so obvious on, say, a cylinder or something, but it does look pretty cool on a plane with lots of subdivisions on it. Increase my amplitude so I can start seeing things happening. And there it is. There's the wave. Looks like a ripple in water. Increase that. Change my wavelength so I get more ripples by reducing my wavelength. And then offset makes the ripples go in or out. Drop off in this case, it should make it fade the farther away it gets from the center. This is a little bit more obvious what's happening, I think. There's a minimum radius, so you can have it so it doesn't start right at the very beginning. max radius so I can control how big it is. Let's see what that does to the shape. If I delete this, it goes back to flat. The other deformer I find works well on flat planes like this is a sine. But you can see, by default, the sine is going up and down. My plane is going downwards like this. If I were to increase my amplitude right now, well, it doesn't really do much, does it? To make it affect the plane, I have to take the deformer and rotate it like that. And now it's affecting my plane. I reduce my wavelength. And I found this is a great way to make curtains. You probably want a few more edges in there. There, like that. See? Now I've got curtains. If you want to keep this shape, and you don't want the former to make any weird changes to it. If I were to move this around, you can see that it's still on the deformer. If I want to keep this permanent, edit, delete by type history. Now I can do whatever I like with this. That is baked into the geometry. And now I've got curtains I can work with. Those are the nonlinear deformers.